Welcome back to the Tool Crib. Yesterday, the brand new Leatherman Free P2 and P4 came in the mail, and over the past 24 hours, I've gotten the opportunity to get acquainted with these multi-tools on both their form and function. And today I'd like to do a brief overview for you, kind of highlight the differences between the two multi-tools, and then give you my thoughts on what I think about the new offerings from Leatherman. I want to apologize in advance. I'm actually working on the road this month, and the RV park where I'm located happens to be adjacent to a highway, so there may be quite a bit of ambient noise that comes through on the video today, and I apologize for that in advance. It's beyond my control. Also, there's a light rain, and so you may hear some raindrops falling on your head. Okay, so the P2. The first thing of note is that the P2 comes with a pocket clip, whereas the P4 comes with a lanyard ring. Now, the P2 is being sold at $120 and the P4 right now is $140. So at that price point, you would think that they would just throw in both options per tool, but they are not doing that. Now, as I understand it, the pocket clip is going to be available at a later date, so that P4 owners will be able to purchase it as an accessory, so you can add a pocket clip to the multi-tool if you want. They also come in the new sheaths that they've been touting, these new light gray sheaths. Now, the P2 doesn't fit real well in there with that pocket clip, kind of bulges it out, but then again, if you have a pocket clip, odds are you're not putting it in the sheath. Also on the P4, it catches if you try to put it in this direction, which is the way I would want to, because as you pull it out, I'd want to be able to one hand open your outside accessible tools. But if to do that, either you have to shimmy it in there, or you're going to have to flip it around, or take off the lanyard ring entirely, which is probably what I would opt to do anyway, because I sheath carry my multi-tools. The outside accessible blade on the P2 is a combo blade. Now, all the blades on both of these tools are going to be 420 high carbon, and as much as they're charging for these things, I really thought they should upgrade the blade steel at least to 154 cm, but they did not. 420 HC is all we get. So you have half serrated, half straight blade with a new blade design, which I'm okay with the new blade design, especially on the P4. I think it's going to be a pretty good utility blade, and it's going to be easier to sharpen in my opinion. On the other side of the P2, we have outside accessible scissors, and we'll take a closer look at those when we get into the P4. Another thing of note is that the plier heads on each of the two models are not interchangeable. The P4 has a wider plier head because it has an additional layer, so they cannot be interchanged. The last thing of note is that on the housing, you can see that the housing is stamped a little differently for the P2 as opposed to the P4. The P4 has that extra layer, and so it's set a little wider. So what they're doing is using the same housing here, and also see if you can notate it there. It actually angles back, so it has a bit of a curve to it because of the way it's stamped, where they have a different bend in it, and you can really highlight the bend on the P2 right in here, where you can see where it gets stamped down closer so that it fits those plier heads. I think that is pretty much the only differences between the two. So we're going to set the P2 to the side, and then we're going to concentrate the rest of the way on the P4. So let's look at the outside tools on the P4. Let's get over to the blade first. So the main blade sticks out further in the housing, and I think that's for a couple different reasons. First of all, right away you can tell by just running your thumb across the edge here which one has the blade and which side is the saw, because that one will be flush and this one will be raised. Also, it probably gives it a bit more strength there. So the thumb holes for the Free series, they're quite a bit smaller than what you're going to find like on the Wave or something, and so they're a little sharp. Now, that's negligible. It's not that big of a deal, and a little bit of a polished job, but they are a little sharp out of the factory. So here's the blade for the P4. Like I said, I think that's going to be a lot easier to sharpen. As a matter of fact, let's bring the Wave in here real quick so we can take a look at the difference between the two blades. As a matter of fact, you know, the Wave is going to be a direct competitor to the P series, so it'd be a good idea to kind of highlight the differences and the similarities between the two. And then the next thing is, on the opposite side, have a redesigned rescue blade or serrated blade. So let's get the Waves opened up here. So on the P4, it feels like, yeah, I believe it is. It feels like it's quite a bit thicker. So let's take a look at those. Yes, it is. It's noticeably so. They made it quite a bit stronger, but maybe they did that because obviously it's not nearly as wide, because it sits more flush with the frame than you're going to find on the Wave. So the Wave is a lot wider, and then it has a different blade shape up front, whereas the Waves cuts back and it has about a 1/2 inch up here for draw cutting. The P4 angles forward. It's still got a little bit of an edge here, straight edge, about 1/4 inch, but the front side of this blade it has a steeper angle there. And what I found by just doing some light testing is that this works pretty good as a scraper, also works good as a chisel of sorts. I did do a little bit of shaving on some wood. Now, you're not going to be able to put a whole lot of pressure on it, to use it as a dedicated chisel, because this blade is a lot longer, and then you're going to run the risk of snapping it off or bending it. But it does work nicely as a scraper. All right, let's move around to the other side, and we have the saw blade. So let's get the Wave saw blade open up here real quick. There we go. And try to get those side by side. Now you can see that the Wave has a little bit more cutting surface than the P4 is going to have. Also a slightly redesigned blade as well. And then on the opposite side is, let's see where we're at. Here we go. Are those outside accessible scissors. Now let me get the Wave opened up, because this is one of the key things that the P4 has over the Wave. The Wave, has those little tiny scissors. So when you look at those together, you can see that the P4 has quite a bit beefier scissors. Now if we bring the Surge in real quick, which the P4 measures in at 4.25 inch frame, the Wave at a 4-inch frame, and the Surge at a 4.5 inch frame. So it's basically right in between them. Now the Surge obviously has, a bit beefier scissors than the P4 is going to have, but then again, it's a much larger tool, and so you would expect that the Surge is going to have better implements on it anyway, simply for the fact that they can be built stronger because they're larger. Now we're going to get flipped around to the inside. Well, one of the things that they're touting with the new Free series is that all you have to do is break it apart, which it doesn't take very much force, and then those handles are pretty free operating. Let me back the camera up here. There we go, so that we can get a better look at that. So you break those apart, and then it just rotates right over, and you can pop it into place. You'll also notice that the Epic haptics, as they call them, give you a pretty nice audible sound for when those handles engage. Now, on the P4, you have needle nose, regular pliers, your 154 cm wire cutters and hard wire cutters, and then on the back you have a little bit of a redesign on the crimpers. Now they say that the new plier heads on the Free series are the strongest that they've ever put into a standard duty or medium duty multi-tool from Leatherman, which I would tend to agree with that. They do look like they're quite a bit stronger than that of the Waves, but when you put them side by side with the Surge or the Super Tool 300, I would have a hard time believing that these are stronger than the Surge plier heads. All right, so I forgot to show you all those other implements, the interior ones. So with a simple thumb rule, you can access all of the implements on the outside. So the first implement we're going to look at is the new can opener. And this is more in the Victorinox style without the little screwdriver on the end. And then the next tool over is going to be the awl. Now, the awl does have a cut surface here so that you can use it as a reamer, but they have made this kind of a combo tool where they put a mini screwdriver on the end. I don't know that I like that much. This awl I'm not particularly fond of. I mean, it probably will work, but I would rather that come down to a point instead of trying to integrate that little screwdriver on there. Next tool over is the combination medium screwdriver, little worthless ruler. I don't know what you're going to measure with that. And then the wire stripper. The wire stripper is pretty small opening, so I think the largest wire that you're going to be able to get in there is probably around 14 gauge, maybe, if you're lucky. Then the last tool on this side is going to be the file. This is not a diamond coated file like you're going to find on the Wave. Has a single cut on this side and cross cut file on this side. It's not very long, about 1.5 inches long, so I'm not sure how useful that file will ever be. On the opposite side, you have what they're calling their mini pry tool, which would work as a screwdriver, medium screwdriver as well. And then on the cut edge here, this is a package opener, so just score that along your those clamshell packages and rip it right open. And I actually like this tool a lot. I wish they would integrate that onto the Wave. That would be a welcome addition to the Wave. I think some of the multi-tools, one of the things that we use this day and age is package openers, or could utilize them. So the next tool is a combination number 1, number 2 Phillips with integrated bottle cap opener. Now you notice that the two implements on the interior of this side are built quite a bit thicker, so they're pretty stout. It's a lot stouter than what you're going to find in this 2D, like, you know, basically. I'll tell you what, I got the Wingman right here. Let's take a look at it real quick. Let me get this opened up. Let's see if I can't. No, it's on the other side. Well, I might have misspoke. I guess the Wingman also is about the same thickness, so it just has the integrated bottle cap opener. So, I mean, looks like they borrowed some cues from the Wingman. Now, one of the things that we're missing, obviously, from the Wave is going to be the bit exchanger, which I'm very fond of. This really adds to your versatility. So while you get a longer reach with the integrated screwdriver, the Phillips driver on the free, you lose versatility, because with the Wave and Surge Charge series, you can add on a bit extender and get out there 3 inches further, and then with the bit kit you get 42 additional bits. So I think that's a step back, in my opinion. Let's get this one closed up. Well, I'll tell you what, let's take a little closer look at this new magnetic architecture while we're on this side. So I'll close this up and we'll look at this side first. So the way this works is, down at the bottom, this is where the magnet is, and then it has these 2 floating spacers in between here. Now, when we get flipped around to the other side, I'll show you more how those work, and one of the benefits, I think, to having a P4 is what you can do with it, because these are floating. So they engage with your lock mechanism down here. Now, when these tools are closed, they actually don't come in full contact with the magnet. Now, this may be difficult to see, but there is actually a slight gap between the magnet and the tools. Now, another thing that they do is, if you'll look here on the back, the interior tools actually don't ride on the stop back here. So, and the outer tools do. So the outer tools can't be rolled because they're in contact. It takes more pressure. But the interior tools can. They don't contact until they get into this position. So once they're close to 90 degrees is when they come in contact with the stop on the back. So then as you open them up, let's see if we can, let's just do one. So the hook on the back of them, as you pull forward, will slip down, and then that engages the lock. It springs back, and that's what locks your tool in. That's how they're able to get so that you're able to roll the interior tools out. Now the magnet sits just below it, not quite in contact, so that provides the breakaway force, or lessens the breakaway force, so that you're able to thumb roll those off, and that's why the interior tools jump out and the exterior tools don't. Another thing that the magnets, another use for the magnets, is that they have on top here, it looks to be a plastic cover over the top of the magnet. So the magnet actually seats right below that, and so what that does is provide a little bit of distance between the two. That way it's not direct magnet against magnet. Otherwise, the force to open them, it would require quite a bit more force to break them apart. Now, these little tabs that they have that are broke out from the frame here, if we can get it to focus, there we go. Those little tabs serve a purpose, and I'm going to get to that here when we get back to the pliers. But what that does is when you shut them, they actually bypass one another and they engage, keeping the handles from torquing over too much. While I'm thinking about it, let's go ahead and look at that. So the way these, the way these epic haptics work, as Leatherman calls them, is, that you get that nice audible sound when they lock into position. So let's see if we can close this up so we can look at it better. I wonder what view here. There we go. It's difficult to see, but here is that elastomer bushing that they're talking about. So what it is you have a keyhole punched out into the frame, or molded into the frame, and then the larger part of the keyhole is where that elastomer bushing is, and the pivot point for the handle rides along that other part. Let's see, I made a little, here we go, I made a little diagram to kind of highlight how this works. So you have the elastomer bushing that's pressed into the housing, and then this is a pivot point for the handle, and then this is just the housing itself. It's, as I mentioned before, kind of in a keyhole fashion. So what happens is, as you open the handle, the stop pushes the pin into the elastomer bushing, causing compression. And once it bypasses that stop, the elastomer spring will push the pin back in and seat it against the stop. So let's take a closer look at that. I want you to pay attention over here to here we go, this direction. So as I open this handle, this pin is going to push back into that bushing until it bypasses the pin, and then it's going to snap into place. Can you see how that doesn't rotate centered? It's kind of eccentric. That's because it's pushing into the bushing, and once it gets past that stop, it's going to snap back, and that's how they are able to make that work. Now, that's a pretty innovative design. That's actually pretty smart, but it comes with a drawback. The same flex that you get to allow that mechanism to work causes a lot of handle play. And let's just bring the wave in real quick again, because that's going to be its direct competitor. You can take the wave, and I can make it go, but I have to put about twice or maybe 3 times the force on the wave in order to do that. And I don't have to put nearly as much force on this one, and I'm able to kick it over quite a little ways. And that's the reason for those little tabs. Now, one of the downfalls that I found already in this is that when you're using this with pliers, it creates a lot of hot spots. So the Wave, because it has those curved surfaces for the interior handles, which when they open up are on the exterior, the Wave is comfortable. So you can put a lot of pressure on it and it doesn't bite into your hand. Where the Free series is a complete different story. So you have the edges here. These could be negligible. That's not that big of a deal. The little pins, the little punch outs here actually do dig into your hands, but the worst part of it is these catches back here on the back for the inner tools. So when you're really clamping down on those, that thing digs into your hand bad and it hurts. Now, I've seen a couple other reviews where people are saying, oh, it's not that bad and this, that, and the other. I think it's because the tools are new and the new hasn't worn off yet. But once the new does wear off, you're still going to be left with these problems. And to me, that's a real drawback. But, everybody's different and maybe that's okay with you. For me, I don't use my multi-tools as, just conversation pieces. I do have an extensive collection of tools that I don't use just because I like the engineering and behind multi-tools, but I actually do use my tools. And the Surge is my go-to, and there's a reason that the Surge is my go-to, because in my opinion it's the best of the best. The only thing that comes close for me is going to be the Victorinox Swiss tool, and that we'll get into that at a different time. But there are some major drawbacks to this. The last drawback that I see are the magnets themselves. Now, they have to have the magnets in there because of the design of the interior tools. To be able to get those to flip up like that, they have to have something to hold them back. Because it's not contacting this catch back here, there's nothing. If the magnets weren't there, they would just flop freely out to almost the 90-degree position until they came in contact. So the magnets are necessary in this particular design to keep them held down. The problem is multi-tools in and of themselves are designed to interact with ferrous metals. So you're using them to tighten up bolts or cut tie wire. I am a welder and a millwright by trade, so I'm around metallic dust and shavings all the time. It is a bad idea, in my opinion, to have a magnet in a multi-tool. For me, I liken it to eating your ice cream with mustard on top. Of course, I've never had mustard with my ice cream, so, there's that. I think it's a bad idea. And I think that once people start using these multi-tools, they're going to find out pretty quick that it is a worse problem than they ever anticipated. And people have said, well, you could just clean it out. You just take a blowgun and blow it out. With its open frame design, it's going to be easy to clean. Well, it does have a bit of an open frame design. But I can tell you for certain that the only way you're going to clean that out completely is by dismantling it. I think it is a terrible idea to have magnets in a multi-tool. So the magnet right there is where it's located, right at the bottom of the frame there. That's going to fill up with all kinds of gunk, and it's going to affect the functionality of the multi-tool. And I really think that is just a step back to me. I don't think it was a good idea at all. There's a couple other things that I want to talk about that Leatherman is never going to tell you, but I want to point it out to you. And we talked about the top of that plier head. You can see that it forms a flat spot across here, and it seats higher than the actual frame. So you could actually use this as a pommel. So you have a little mini hammer there. Now, Leatherman's obviously never going to tell us to do that because that's not what it was designed for, but you and I both know that it's going to be used in that fashion. Let's see, where was I? Oh, the next thing. So, one of the things that I've noticed, and I want to open this up and then I want to close them so we can highlight this. The spacers here are floating spacers. Well, let's see if we can get there. We go. So they actually have a little notch in the front there where they actually come down and seat against the bottom of the frame. They're not connected to anything with the exception of the pin here. So they are held in place in that fashion. Now we'll close them back up. We'll look at the back side. There we go. So you can see that also they're not attached. Here we go. They're not attached to the tool release either. Man, that just does not want to focus. So these pins are actually floating, and what that will allow you to do is, if you choose to, it's going to void your warranty if you do, but you could actually make your knives ambidextrous. So if you wanted to, if you're right-handed, you leave this blade in its position, and then you would change this blade's position to the other side. So you'd have to take this whole assembly out, switch the outer two tools, and then put them back together. And that's fine for right-handed people, but if you're left-handed, there is one problem, because you would be switching the main blade for the scissors and the scissors over to where the main blade slot is. Here's the problem, is that the scissors in the current position, you're able to lift them out using the tension bar as a catch, where when you flip these over to the other side, it's going to be smooth and you're not going to have anything to grip there. So in order to get the scissors out, if you decided to do something like that, you would actually have to pull the inner implements out a bit and then pinch the scissors in order to get them out. Food for thought. So my conclusion is this. For me personally, there are too many negatives on these two multi-tools to warrant using them in real use. Now, maybe all the things that I talked about are okay with you. I would suggest waiting until they're in stores to actually go actually put hands on them and use them. When you really clamp down on them, you're going to find out that those hot spots are actually pretty intense, and it actually does hurt whenever you're trying to clamp down on them. I've said before, and I'll say it again, magnets in a multi-tool, bad idea. And the blade play is, I guess I would be okay with that. Well, I say that, but it's actually pretty much a downfall for me too. For those three things, those three reasons, these multi-tools are going to be, they're just going to be part of the collection. I'm never going to use these. In fact, I'm almost afraid to test them out very much because of the fact that I know that they're going to get filled up with metal crap, and I really don't want to dismantle them in order to get all that cleaned out to put them back on the shelf. I would suggest going and putting hands on them. Maybe all the things that I talked about are okay with you, and maybe they're the right tool for you. Personally, I think Leatherman took a step back here. Honestly, I think they tried to fix what wasn't broken, but to each their own, right? If my video was informative for you, I hope you mash that thumbs up button. I would appreciate earning your subscription. My name is Ben. You've been watching the Texas Tool Crib. I'll see you next time.